Hello guys, this is Zimmerit, and today's video is going to be a post-build review of this kit here, which is Dragon's, or I guess kind of Cyber-Hobby, because it says Cyber-Hobby on the box, but then it has Dragon up here, I don't know. Basically it's the Cyber-Hobby / Dragon Sturmhaubitze 42 Ausf.G with the Zimmerit, and this video is going to be basically looking at how good the kit was to build, and because I'm a little bit of a fanatic about Sturmhaubitze, then I'm going to also talk about how to fix the kit, because there's a couple of inaccuracies with it. Well, actually, there's quite a number, but not all of them are necessary. I'm going to talk about which ones I think you should do, which ones you can do easily with the parts that are supplied in the kit, and then a couple other ones that I've done with spare parts that don't come in the kit. So, yeah, let's get into it. So I figured it'd be best to start off by pointing out all the things I've done to the kit to make it obvious what comes in the kit and what doesn't. Essentially, first of all, I've added an aftermarket gun barrel here, not because the kit one is bad. The kit one's very good. It's one piece. Slide molded, only a very, very faint molding seam on the top and the bottom, so it's really easy to clean up. I just went with the aftermarket one here because I wanted the Vespa style of muzzle brake. You can see that on a couple of rare vehicles where they had to repair damaged muzzle brakes, so they just took them off the field howitzers or the Vespa. And it looks cool, so I went with that. That's the only reason why I went with the aftermarket gun barrel. I've also added some steel return rollers here. Not because the kit ones are wrong again, it's just I want to do that. When this vehicle would have been built, what the kit's supposed to represent, the factory that made this vehicle, Alkett, still had lots of rubber return rollers, and they were still putting rubber wheels, return rollers, on tanks months and months and months after this would have been built. I've also added the side skirt rails, as well as this kind of framey thing along the back here. Those don't come in the kit. I added them because they kind of should be there. Like technically when this vehicle was built, when they started adding the Zimmerit, they also started adding this rail in the back, and they added the skirt rails like months before then. But you can find vehicles that don't have the side skirts and don't have this rail in the back, so I added them. They don't come in the kit, you don't necessarily need them. So everything I've mentioned so far is things that I've done that you don't actually need to do to make the kit accurate. What else is there? I guess the gun shield here for the machine gun, loader's machine gun. I went with one with a square hole, and on the box art it shows a square hole. The kit, I do not think, gives you this option. They gave the one with the slightly more rounded hole. That's an earlier type. Once again, this is not something you need to do because I cannot find a specific reference for when they started using the square hole. I'm not even sure if the square hole was an official thing or if it was the crews making it more square. They did that to fit the MG42 in there if they wanted to, because mainly it was an MG34. So once again, another thing that I've done that you don't actually need to worry about. I'm just pointing out things I've done. Another thing I've done to the kit, which isn't with the kit parts, it's not really important, I just want to point it out to not confuse people. I have an empty tool clamp here for the, it's essentially the same thing as this. It's where the other end of this loop would go. In the kit they only give you these with the clamps molded on. So you just basically wrap the cable around and then have it loop back, and then the other end would loop into there and clamp in. I wanted this to be a little more interesting. As you can probably see, I've got the tow cables basically wrapped around and hooked to the back. And then I went with the empty clamp here, which I got from a Panzer III kit. And then I put the cable through there because it looked cool. Also, you can probably see that I have little wing nuts on there. Like there's a little wing nut there, and also right about there. They give you these as an option. You can slice off the little, basically, nub that's there to represent it. It's really, really small. It doesn't look that good. Basically, there's a little bump there. You can just slice it off, and then on the sprue with the wheels, there's a whole bunch of these little wing nuts, and you can cut them off and glue them on there to replace the detail. And it's a little fine. It's very, very small, but it looks a lot better. There's a couple other points where you can also do that. I guess mainly where the S-hook clamps go, which you're going to talk about later, because don't put the S-hook clamps on there. And also on the rear here, if I can get in the camera, they also tell you to put it right about there, and on the other side as well of the spare track bracket on the rear here. Same thing there. And once again, easy little detail. I think it adds a little bit to the kit, so it's pretty cool. Another thing I want to point out, if anybody's curious, is that they often tell you to put these on as an option. These are like little things, and just stick them in the wheels. These are actually just track pins, if anybody's curious. So often in photos you can just see them just sticking them in there just as extras to go with basically the spare tracks if they want to pin something in there. Yeah, I thought that's just an interesting fact. I was always wondering what they were for a while, and I learned not too long ago that that's what they are. They're just track pins. So, yep, cool fact. And I've got them sticking out very, very far because I'm going to add Ausf.G and really wide tracks to this kit. So they need wider pins. But if you're going to do it, just stick the pins in basically all the way. Yep, cool fact there if anybody's interested. So looking at the engine deck, a couple of things here I want to point out. First of all, I added some Zimmerit to the top of the toolbox here, which I think should have it. I was able to find references of earlier vehicles like this. This is a quite early production vehicle when they started doing Zimmerit. Later ones had Zimmerit on the front and rear of the fenders as well, but earlier ones didn't. And I know that later vehicles also had the Zimmerit on the top of the toolbox here. Can't find a reference if the earlier ones did as well, so I just put it on there anyways. I kind of did a little crap job on it because I can't do Zimmerit like to save my life, but I think it's acceptable. Another thing that I did here, which is actually something you can easily fix with parts that are supplied in the kit, is they give you the parts in the kit to make the actual hatches here for the engine deck with Zimmerit, and then they also have these guys on top, which are Zimmerit. In real life, the actual hatches themselves did not have Zimmerit, only the little panels on top. So I just used the non-zimmerited panels because they give you basically the entire, or most of the original StuH.G kit without Zimmerit in there. So I just used the non-zimmerited panels and then actually stuck on these little guys on top with the Zimmerit. So I've done that on this hatch here, also on the two hatches that are kind of like here and there. And then for this hatch here, as you can see, there's only one elevated panel on it. This half doesn't have the panel. So when they made these tanks, they put Zimmerit on this half of the hatch, but then there's obviously no Zimmerit underneath here where this elevated panel is. So what I did here was I just took the Zimmerited hatch that they give you and the non-Zimmerited one and sliced them both in half and then glued them together. So I have now half of it with Zimmerit and half of it without. Yep, so it was all easy to do, all parts in the kit. If you're curious how I did the Zimmerit pattern on this thing, actually, I took a little piece from one of the actual one of the actual hatches there with Zimmerit that I didn't use. I kind of made like a little template. You probably can't see that. Essentially just a little piece of Zimmerit waffle paste. There we go. And then I just kind of rub extra thin cement over this, and I just push it down on there. Let it sit for about a minute, and then I yank it off. And because of that, it would essentially glue the waffle texture to the part, and then when I yank it off, it kind of pulls all those, at least that texture up a little bit on the surface of the top of the toolbox there, and it made basically the waffle Zimmerit pattern a little bit weaker than the rest of the kit, but at least it's there. So in the rear of the tank, I've added two little bits of side skirt basically. Once again, that's not in the kit. That kind of goes with the rest of these side skirt rails I've added. You might be able to see I've added some little brass chains kind of in there. It's kind of hard to see, but it essentially goes from the bottom of that little kind of L-shaped bracket that locks in anything that would hook into the towing bars in the back there. And it kind of loops and hooks onto the rear of the hull. I can't even really show you. Don't worry about that. It's like a micro detail that I've gone and added myself. Something because I kind of want to add it for a while. Also, there should be Zimmerit, I believe, all over the rear here. Like up on that panel, up on this panel as well. Honestly, I couldn't really be bothered because I can't do Zimmerit pattern and I'm going to put mud everywhere, so whatever. Not going to be able to notice that there's no texture there really. A couple other things you can do easily is there's a little round hatch right about here in the kit, which is some kind of like coolant vent. That should be gone. That was also removed when they started adding Zimmerit basically. So I just took a knife blade and kind of just scraped it away. It's a little round hatch, almost flush, it's right about there. Also there's two little elevated nubs kind of like right here and there, almost between where the exhausts are. And there's a little circuit, like hemispherical hatch to go on there. That should also not be on there. So I just didn't put it on and I just sliced off the little elevated locating pins there. So more easy fixes with the kit parts. I also added this weld seam around the edge of the shot deflector for the commander's cupola. Easy weld seam, just the only one I really did in the kit except for on the reciprocator, which I'll point out later. And I just basically made it go around there. It kind of goes up and loops around the back up there. And the same thing on the other side. So just a little detail there for the weld seam along the shot deflector for the commander's cupola. So I know I've been pointing out lots of things in the kit that I've been modifying. It's probably getting a little confusing, but essentially the only things that you need to do to make the kit accurate were remove those two things on the rear of the hull I pointed out, add Zimmerit to that toolbox, and add the weld seam here. Everything else I pointed out, like the side skirts, the rail on the engine deck, things like that, the steel return rollers, those are all things that I've added that don't necessarily need to be done. But there's one more thing that needs to be changed, and that's basically the entire fenders of the kit, because they give you basically fenders from a different factory. That factory never built salt howitzers, and they also had a different Zimmerit pattern. So basically that boils down to these little guys here. This little guy, and there's also like 3 more of them. They should be like this, but the ones they give you in the kit along with the entire fenders themselves are basically they're round. They have a little triangular brace on the top of a photo etch. They don't have that kind of square or at least rectangular kind of pressed steel thing around the outside. So that you can also fix that when there's no parts in the kit to fix that with. I had to go looking through my extras and figure out something. That's kind of a weird inaccuracy. Don't know why they do that. And there's more things. I guess also on the topic of the fenders, they tell you to put on the other type of rear light. You want to go with this one here, which is also in the kit. It's basically the one that they tell you to put on. It looks like this. It's square and it has the little 4 holes on it. The one that you should go with in the kit is, it's like a tubular style one with a clear part that goes inside there in the end. Hopefully you can see that there. I haven't actually put on the clear part yet, obviously, because I'm going to put that on after I paint it. But you can fix that easy with the parts in the kit. For the fire extinguisher, they tell you to put it on either this way, or they can tell you to angle it the other way or have it straight. Put it like this with the head of it, like the top square part here, facing the corner of the engine deck up there. Also, they can tell you to put on the S-hook mounts on the fenders. I had to scratch build some C-hook. It's probably like, if you don't know anything about StuHs, you're probably kind of confused with what I'm saying. Essentially, they tell you to put on little clampy things here to put on some S-hooks, which are these S-shaped things. You don't want to do that because like that was removed 6 months before this vehicle would have been built. So I had to kind of scratch build another type of tool clamp holder here to fit in the C-hooks, which are, if you can probably see, it's this thing here, kind of what's hooking the tow cable into the actual bracket there. It's a little hard to see, but it's like that kind of like rounded thing in there. That's another thing that was inaccurate in the kit, and it's a little bit disappointing as well. So basically, despite all the things that I've pointed out that are wrong with the kit historically, the actual build of the thing is very, very good. The detail's also very good. Looking at the Zimmerit areas especially, well, first of all, the texture is really, really nice. It's really good looking. Like I was saying, there's a couple points where they probably should have it, which are the toolbox top, the lower rear hull area, and not necessarily in this vehicle, but if they make a couple other kits with the waffle Zimmerit, and they also should have that here on those kits, but not on this one, because I found a photo of an early one like this, and there's no Zimmerit right here, so I don't know. The actual Zimmerited panels, they fit very well, considering that they're new molded parts to go on, basically to replace older ones. So that's basically the hull, the entire superstructure, and the engine deck. They still fit perfectly with the rest of the components from older kits that are used for the main detail parts, like the roofs and the fenders, stuff like that. Only parts where the fit was a little bit weird with the fenders, or sorry, with the Zimmerited pieces, is kind of along the front of the hull here, where the bow plate here meets the glasses plate up here. A little bit of like a tricky fit there, but I mean, I just kind of extra thinned and squeezed together and kind of just fix it up a little bit of a gap basically. Also, same kind of thing along here, where the basically the top of the superstructure here meets the side. So you can probably see I've done a little bit of a filling there because it was a little bit of a gap. Then I was going to kind of remake the Zimmerit pattern over that, and then I realized, oh yeah, I'm going to put spare tracks over this anyways, so I don't care. That's going to be hidden anyways, so whatever. But looking at the Zimmerit pattern close up, it is really, really good. I built one of these before, a similar kit that has the same parts essentially. And once you give this thing a pin wash in the end, it looked really good. All the weld seams and rivets that are all over the top of the superstructure here, you can see also on the cupola, they're always really, really good. You can see also, like I mentioned earlier, I added a weld seam here, and honestly it looks a little bit worse than the kit supplied weld seams, but whatever, at least I added it. So looking at the tools as well, once again, really, really good detail in there. The tool clamps, even though they're molded in plastic, are very, very good. What I do is I sand them down a little bit. So essentially they're a little bit thicker than this, the actual little latch there. So what I do is I just kind of sand in from the sides like that, from this way, from that way, and from below, and just thin it down a little bit, being very careful not to destroy it, but it just helps to make them look a little more detailed and fine. I also did that over here in the shovel. Well, further back on the wire cutters there, everything like that. A really easy thing you can do to just improve the look of those tools, but essentially the only place on the entire kit where there's like a little bit of a seam to clean up, not like a gap, but like just a seam from the molding process, is the sides of the tools. Like on every kit ever, you get a little bit of like a seam down the side because it's a rounded part. But other than that, the entire kit has, I don't recall ever seeing any flash, having to fill any gaps. Overall, really, really great kit. Just essentially a couple of the accuracy things kind of bugged me, but whatever. Earlier on I was mentioning that there's another place where you need to add a weld seam, and that's right here. You can see along the gap between where the two halves of the reciprocator here mount right behind the gun manlet. Should be a weld seam there. Usually there's a gap anyway, so when you feel it, just make it a weld seam. Also, as you can see, I didn't go with the interior because since they added that metal barrel on there, I basically had to like destroy the interior of the breech assembly there and kind of cobble it together. Somehow I managed to make it work, but usually these kits, they give you like a full interior, essentially. It's not 100% full, but they give you the radios for the sides, a floor, a full breech, the seats for the gunner and the loader, or I guess the commander. So the interior that they give you is usually really good, just for looking through the hatches. If you're going to like leave the roof off, you're going to want to add some more ammo boxes in there and a few other details. But if you want to see what the interior looks like, go to my review of the Dragon, my post-build review of the Dragon StuH F8, because I actually went with the interior in that one. But overall, the interior they give you is really, really good. And like I said, if you're just going to leave the hatches open, it looks as good as you need. Any more detail isn't going to really help because you're not going to see it. While we still have the roof off, I also want to point out when you're building the kit, glue this little curvy piece here, whatever, glue it to the roof, not to the superstructure. Because usually they tell you to glue it, and it basically goes right across there. And if you do that, then you can't get the gun in afterwards. So then you're kind of, I mean, you can, but you have to leave the superstructure off as well. So if you glue the superstructure down with that piece in there, it's going to be next to impossible for you to actually get the gun back in there. So glue that piece to the roof like this, and all your problems will be solved. Took me a little bit of trial and error to figure that out, but yeah, this is a really, really important thing if you're building one of these kits. Glue this piece to the roof, not to the front of the superstructure, otherwise you're going to have problems. So jumping back to the fenders a little bit, another thing that I think you should easily do to this kit to improve it a little bit is just scribe little lines basically every time you have one of these little gaps in the fender here. So every time there's a little arm sticking out, so this guy here, the photo etch one's here and here and moving onto the back, just scribe a little line there, as you can see vertically in the actual side of the fender there. An easy detail, and I think it adds a little bit to the kit. Also, the fenders that they give you are thin enough that you can easily bend them by hand and add a little bit of a just damage to them. Very easy. And the actual tread pattern on them is really, really good, if you can see that there. So overall, my final thoughts on the kit are kind of mixed. Overall, the kit itself builds up really, really well. If you don't care about the accuracy at all, it's a great kit. The photo etch that they supply you with is minimal. Essentially, it's just, you know, the two vents in the engine deck here. You have another one that's similar that goes kind of underneath the rear of the engine deck. A couple little photo etch supports for the fenders, I guess, right there and there. And then you have one more piece, which is really hard to see, but it kind of goes, it's a vertical plate that goes in kind of along the rear of the fender, behind where the jack is and on the other side as well. So minimal photo etch, but there's only actually one more thing. Also a little ring of photo etch inside the cupola, as you might be able to see. That's a little bit hard to get in there, honestly, so I used to leave it out because I just couldn't get it in there. But yes, as I was saying, minimal photo etch. You only really have photo etch in the spots where it's needed. They give you magic tracks in the kit. Oh, one more part where there's actually photo etch I completely forgot. Also, two little rings that go inside the idler. I'm going to stop talking about the photo etch now. Yes, so we also get magic tracks in the kit, which are very good. I haven't put them on here yet. I'm probably going to go with some aftermarket Ausf.G because I want a different type of track on the kit. but the kit supplied tracks are very, very good. They're not DS. I don't like DS. They are the individual link magic tracks, and they are, like I said, really, really, really good. And I would not recommend you replace them unless you want to get metal tracks or something. I'm only replacing them because I want a different type of track. The level of detail overall is very, very good. The fit is good. I mean, the actual kit itself, there's nothing wrong with it in the building aspects. Just, like I said, inaccuracies. You need to basically do some modifications to the rear of the hull, to the engine deck, to replace the fenders entirely, move some of the tools around. You'll probably want to, not necessarily, but you can always replace the return rollers there with the metal ones. You also want to add the side skirts and this little thing on the back of the engine deck. So and also maybe that square hole in the gun shield. I don't know. Because of all that, if you're worried about building an accurate assault howitzer like this Sturmhaubitze, I'd recommend that you don't buy this kit and instead you buy the July, I think it is, July 1944 production StuH 3 Ausf.G, which they give you the right wheels. They give you these steel return rollers. It builds up slightly later. If anybody's concerned, this kit builds up to essentially a November to about March 1943 to 44. So like a late 43, early 44 vehicle. That StuH I'm talking about you should buy instead is the July 44. So it's a little bit later. It give you the later drive sprockets. They actually give you a later roof with the machine gun and like the little circular thing instead of the actual fold-up shield. But they give you this thing on the back of the engine deck, this little rail there. They give you the side skirts, a later type of side skirt, but they still give you the side skirts. Essentially that kit, also you get the right fenders in that kit. Essentially that kit solves all the problems, the accuracy problems that this kit has. And then you could just buy an aftermarket 105 barrel and just stick it in there, and there you go, you have an assault howitzer. I mean, on that kit you still need to probably add the Zimmerit to the front of the fenders and of the toolbox. And you probably need to do that modification of the non-zimmerited engine hatches and the things I talked about on the rear of the hull. But those are all things you can easily do without buying any extra parts. Those are all things you can just do by slicing off details or by just using other parts that are supplied in the kit. And I guess for the Zimmerit you need to figure out how to make your own Zimmerit. But essentially, yeah, if you're worried about accuracy or you just want to buy a better kit, I'd go with that one because it's the same thing but you get more. You get the side skirts, you get more details for the back, and to me it's more accurate, so that's really what matters. But yeah, so that's kind of my thoughts. It's a really, really good kit, the way you build it up, but the accuracy, it's a little bit off. And mainly just the fenders. The fenders bother me. I mainly just tore apart this kit because I found it to be a little bit inaccurate, so whatever. But if you want to buy it and build it up, it doesn't matter to me how you build it up. It's a great kit, it's a fun kit, it's a Dragon StuH, it looks awesome. And I mean, even doing the modifications for me were quite fun, so yeah. I hope I actually gave you guys enough like close-up detail of the actual like parts in the kit, but I mean I've built like, I think I've built 7 Dragon StuH 3Gs now, so they're kind of like, you just go through them. I didn't mention this, but the instructions were essentially flawless. I don't remember seeing any parts in the instructions where something was mislabeled, though for probably most of the kit I didn't even look at the instructions because I just knew what parts to put on. When I built the other one, the other Zimmerited one, the StuH 3G I was talking about, which is essentially the same kit just with the right fenders and so on, and the non-howitzer barrel, that one didn't have any accuracy, or sorry, any inaccurate instruction labeling and stuff like that really. So yeah, overall my thoughts are great kit, buy it, build it, have fun. But if you're really worried about the accuracy, just buy the Dragon StuH 3 Ausf.G. I think it's like 6633 or 6644. One of those is that one of them is an F8. I forget which one's which, but yeah, just get that kit and then buy an aftermarket 105 barrel and stick it in, and then you're good. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Because I was talking about the modifications and everything so much, I'm going to make a summary in the description of this video talking about the things I did and the things that are necessary to not make it too confusing for you guys. But yes, like I was saying, thanks for watching guys, hope you enjoyed the video. We got to thank the patrons, of course, they help me making these videos. We have Gary Wayne Bradford, Philip Kruger, Harry Ainsworth, Ricky from Ryan's Painting, Chris Gorse, Ian Sustrick, Johnny Foxshot, Richard Ward, John Butler, Sam Murphy, Jun Yi, Mika and Eastrock, and Rudolph Kiros, who will support me on Patreon. You guys are super generous. It means a lot to me that you help me this way. Helps me buying kits and buying all the aftermarket accessories to make kits accurate. And of course, we also got to thank Dr. Eo, who supports me through PayPal. That's also really awesome. Thank you guys very much. Much appreciated. And to everybody else, thank you very much for watching and commenting below. If you have any questions about the kit, or questions about things I did, or anything like that, or if you have an idea for a video I can do, please post it down below. I'll try to do them as soon as I can. If it's a good idea, if I can do it right away, I will. And yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next one. Goodbye.